Hello, everybody, and welcome to another special edition of the Rams Review Podcast. Our podcast came out last night, but hey, as is the case here on the pod, every time we record, breaking news happens. And of course, it broke this morning as Derby have now signed Ebou Adams on a permanent contract from Cardiff City for a fee to be reported in and around, I believe, £500,000, if reports are to be believed. This caps off a really long, would say, pursuit from Derby. Ebou was very key to the promotion back to the championship. And I think he's a certifiable fan favorite, cult hero, and somebody that we were probably desperate to get in because, he's actually not bad at football either. So we assembled a team here to talk a little bit about what this sign-in means and everything like that. And joining me first up is Jack. Jack, busy couple of days. You were at Rams Review HQ yesterday with Jason talking about different things, and then the news breaks. But thanks for joining me here today.
Yeah, it's good to be here again. I mean, it's big news. I think Ebou Adams, the impact he had can't really be overstated. Like, we can't kind of big it up more than deserved because it was so big that you kind of you kind of run out of superlatives for him, really. I mean, I was just looking back at my piece from his first match, the debut against Charlton at the Valley, and that was the first time we heard Paul Warne say that truly looks like his team, and we could see impact there. But I also wrote that day that if he continued in the vein he had at the Valley, then he could very quickly become a fan's favourite. Now, I don't think I envisaged when I wrote that it going quite as well as this. And if there's one person for whom he has become a favourite over the past, 155 days, it's Will.
And I would like to bring him in. It's Will Brady, or as he's known on Twitter, Will Savage, who is, I would say this, reading his Twitter bio, massive Derby County fan. Obviously, that's why he's on the show. But he's also an Ebou Adams admirer. Will, welcome to the Rams Review Podcast. How the heck are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you.
So, Will, talk to me about this because Jack's right there. I mean, we all love Ebou Adams. We love the smile. We love the fact that he can play football. We love the fact he just seems like a genuinely nice bloke. But you started, I wouldn't say a campaign because I think maybe some stuff was already underway, but you kind of led the charge on the Twitter sphere here to bring Ebou Adams back home. 155 days. So sum up when you woke up this morning and you heard the news and you saw that little video where Ebou Adams was kind of checking in. What were your reactions to that?
I mean, it was a little bit surreal, to be honest, to sort of wake up with the news that he'd liked my tweet and then Derby posted replying to it and got a personalized message from him. And obviously just delighted. I mean, firstly, to be done with it and to be able to relax, but also he's such an important addition and he was so important last year. So to get that over the line is brilliant.
Yeah, and shout out to the Derby County admin who included Will in the shout out messages and everything like that. That's a good little touch. And Will, I know we were following along every day. I would scroll through the thing and it wouldn't feel like an actual day unless I saw you're going like day 138 of asking to sign Ebou Adams. So, I mean, we'll probably get to this on who's next for you, Kylian Mbappe, the reincarnation of Ronaldinho, like whatever. We'll figure this out. But talk to me a little bit about similar sentiments to Jack, I would assume. How big is this addition to Derby County's midfield going into the championship?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, we've been crying out for somebody like Ebou who is really bossing the midfield, who's not afraid to go in for tackles, who's not afraid to put his body on the line. And yeah, like Jack said, his impact was instant, and we saw it against Exeter, even at 3-0 up with that block he made. You can see how much it means to him, and obviously how much he wanted to come here, how much we love him. So I think it's just a brilliant signing.
And it does show kind of the different kinds of player portfolios that we're looking at now. Whereas you have someone like Ebou Adams, who not only is a good footballer, but immediately he came into Derby, he kind of embodied the club. He kind of took on with the fans. I know when the fans invaded the pitch in the last day after we got promotion, he was, I would say, what is it, like, it was on like kind of a mosh pit with a flag and everything. And
yeah,
the lad's got a smile that can light up a room, and to kind of see him happy and back. And it really just goes to show that not only are we getting high quality footballers in this club now, we're getting good people as well, which, as I'm sure you and Jack know, maybe you don't, aren't in the working world just as of yet like me, but when you work around with good people, you know, what you can achieve is far significant and far more that atmosphere that you work in than any, you know, any one individual talented team member.
Yeah, definitely. I think also Warren said, doesn't he, that he wants good people in his team, and so Ebou just seems like a natural signing for that, doesn't he? Because I mean, he loves the club clearly, and like you say, he's got such a big smile. He's loving every minute. He gets on so well with the other players, and it's exactly what we need.
Yeah, and they say never fall in love with a lone player, but I think we did very quickly, and thank God he's
Yeah,
ours now. So thank you, David Klaus. Thank you for Darby, and thank you, Will, for delivering Ebou Adams to our door. And hopefully, you know, Jack, let's not, you know, I'm not trying to kill the good vibes, but you know, the championship is a step up from League One, a significant step up from League One. There are some very big boys in this league, but you know, I think I've seen enough from Ebou Adams to think that he will be a success. And I think, you know, maybe didn't work out with him at Cardiff because of different managerial changes or the way that they play and things like that. But, you know, it means a lot, doesn't it, Jack, to get a player in who's hungry to not only be at the football club, but to also sit there and want to perform at the next level and understand what it takes. I mean, he's been training with Cardiff for a couple of weeks. He was, you know, he's played a few games for Cardiff in the past. So it'll be an important season for him to step up, and hopefully Jackie can continue his good form.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look even his time at Cardiff and what we have heard from some Cardiff fans, you know, when you consider kind of the performances he put in at Forest Green, everyone thought the Championship massive step up as well as he'd done in League Two. Obviously, really unfortunate with injuries, but from what I've seen of clips and so on of him in a Cardiff shirt in the Championship in the limited minutes, he didn't look out of place. And I think now coming to Derby, where there's a clearly defined role for him, which we know he thrives in, then it should be a good fit. I think if we kind of look beyond the kind of just football being played on paper and, oh, well, he's never really played regularly in the Championship, and looking to kind of underlying numbers and so on, then, you know, he's the perfect profile for this Derby team. He knows his role. And as I was saying to Jason when we recorded last night, I think as well, the added benefit is that Derby's midfield needs a little bit of continuity, right? The midfield was decimated. Kenzo Halfmain has come in, but otherwise it was what? Liam Thompson, Tyrese Spawner, Darren Robinson, Ben Radcliffe, pretty much were the options. And I'm throwing in a couple of youngsters who barely played a senior game for Derby into that to kind of make it a squad. But I think if you look at it, you know, the fee was initially reported by some outlets as potentially close to £1 million. And there were some concerns around that. And what I was outlining last night was there is a little bit of extra value. It's worth a little bit more in that sense for that continuity. He knows the club, he's thrived at the club, and he knows exactly his role. He can bring that continuity to what will be otherwise a very new midfield. At £500,000, as we are now told, it's the fee has been per Dom from Radio Derby, who is a friend of the podcast. We'd like to think a trusted source. I think it's it's a bit of a bargain, really. I think, as I said, thought he could become a fan favourite pretty quickly. Didn't see it quite as quickly as this. And yeah, I mean, I think he's probably the biggest signing of the summer. I mean, I was just looking back as well, actually, on kind of those first few games. And that Charlton game, we easily saw the energy, that bit of tenacity, and it kind of freeing up Hurahan and Bird. Shrewsbury was a little bit quieter. And then by the time we got to the Exeter game, I mean, that was just a good game plan, well executed, really, from the whole team. And Adams was a key part of that in terms of, again, allowing Bird to venture forward. He got a goal and assist that night at St James Park. But also we started to see that bit of creativity from him as well. And, I think it'll be interesting to see just what role he plays. Is he going to be the one to shore up the midfield to allow somebody who's perhaps less physical, but very, very technically astute and looks a cut above in that sense in Kenzo Helpman? Or, are we going to see him be kind of a box crusher? But yeah, I mean, I think just going back to the Exeter game, because that was the moment, I've done the research here. It was after that game that you started the streak of 155 days, I believe, Will. What was it you saw that night that convinced you to get this going 3 games into his Derby County career?
To be honest, I think it was one moment, and I think it was that clearance he made, that block he made at 3-0 up right at the end. And you could just see his celebrations after he made that. Like, you could see how much it meant to him and how technically excellent it was as well. And yeah, I think that was the moment where I thought, this is a player that we need to sign and who brings such a different dimension to our midfield.
And I will say this, Jack and Will, it kind of is bringing me back shades of Christian Bielik in a way, because Bielik had performed exceptionally well in League One. And the argument behind Bielik was like, well, couldn't he hack it in the Premier, or not in the Premier League? Can he hack it in the Championship? Because we know he wanted to get to the Premier League. And did we overpay for Christian Bielik? Yes, we did. 100%, fully. By like 800%, we overpaid for him, but whatever. But the point is that he came to the Championship. He was hungry. He saw the opportunity that he could, help himself and help the team. And that's fine. That's all what players need. And he stood out in the Championship because he was arguably one of our best players, that right after he had signed. He was fantastic in the Championship, and he was in Poland squads, and you're thinking, okay, this is a player. Obviously, injuries, hit Bielik in a lot of different ways. Financial restrictions hit Derby in a lot of different ways. We kind of know what happened there, and he went to Birmingham, didn't want to play for Derby in League One, but he's now back in League One in the Championship, or with Birmingham, whatever. But the point is that it's very similar to Ebou Adams. He doesn't necessarily have a significantly long track record in the Championship, but he has a willingness as a footballer and a want to be in the Championship and to prove himself. And I get that sense with him, is like, not only am I happy to be here, I also want to prove that I can belong. So in some sense, you're very similar to Christian Bielik in that way, and it worked out very well for Christian Bielik. So hopefully Ebou can fall in that same stead. And Jack, you mentioned it there, and Will, I want to get your thoughts. Ebou Adams could be the player that unleashes Kenzo Houtman in this Derby team. We know that Paul Warren needs, I don't know, a bunch more midfielders because it's just decimated with experience. But, having a key player in there who understands Paul Warren's style of play, because he's not going to have forgotten it all in the 40 odd days since the season ended. He's going to kind of understand, and I'm sure there'll be tactical tweaks from Paul and stuff, but having him understand it a little bit more can maybe teach Kenzo, this is what he's saying when he means this, and I'm going to do, and then having that kind of relationship. Will, how do you see Ebou Adams? Is he going to be that, like, and he has an eye for a goal. He scored an absolute corker as well. But how do you see him with his relationship with Kenzo? Really, do you see it really helping Kenzo develop more and becoming that kind of playmaker, number 8, number 6 player that we need?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, obviously his relationship with Warren will already be very strong, so that's important. And I think Ebou is a player that the other players around that midfield, especially Kenzo, can really trust to do the dirty work and allow Haldmine to play forward, to make those key passes. From the YouTube highlights reels I've seen of Kenzo, he loves to go forward and make those passes through the defence. And so to have Ebou putting in the hard graft behind him will be so important and will really, really help with his development.
And moving on to outside of Ebou Adams, Jack, this really helps Derby in terms of depth as well. Obviously, Paul Warren said he wants to bring in another at least 8 players, and that's, maybe with a couple of players moving out as well, we're probably looking closer to maybe 10 or 12. You just talked there, the need for more midfielders, but I'm going to get on to that point with you, but it's so important to have that piece and Kenzo in the team now, that now you can start to look for accent pieces around there. But let's not shy away from the fact that we still need a lot of depth in midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Paul Warren said on Friday night after the Matlock game, he wants another 4 or 5 midfielders. So Adams is in. Okay, we can make that 3 or 4. And, he was talking about potentially as many as 12 signings. Again, we can take one off that list. but we're talking about still in Paul Warne's vision for the team, a whole new 11 in a sense. Of course, it might not fit together as a coherent 11 because, we probably need 2 goalkeepers in that 11 for one, which, obviously would be an interesting choice if Derby was to field that on the opening day. But yeah, there's a lot of change still to come. It's going to be interesting to see where that happens. But Adams, certainly, if he can free up and kind of unleash Kenzo Halfmoon, and then, you've got Ben Osborne in there as well, Liam Thompson, who knows what his role's going to be. I'd like to see him given a bit more of a chance again this year, because if you think back to when he was last playing in the Championship, to be honest, that was probably his best season of his time at Derby as a senior player, was in administration, the relegation season. So that'll be interesting. But I do think now we can see a vision for how this new midfield and this midfield rebuild is going to look, and the balance that Paul Warne is going for. Whether that's a 3 with Osborne in that midfield, whether that's maybe 2 and Osborne as a wing back, or even a winger, because as the Sheffield United podcast was telling us a couple of weeks ago, some of his best moments have come further forward. Then yeah, I think we can start to see how this team is going to be structured, and with 3.5 weeks to go, pretty much until opening night in Blackburn, then yeah, I think we can all start to get excited. I mean, I think on the whole, it's really starting to get real now that we are 3 weeks away from a Championship return.
I completely forgot about Benny Osborne. That, like, how bad is that for me? I just was like, wow, Ben Osborne, that's right, he plays for us now. I completely forgot about that, but that's a good point, Jack. Just to finish this up, Will, I want to come to you. So, how quickly are you running down to the team store to get an Ebou Adams on the back of your home kit?
Yeah, I think that might wait till Christmas, but that's got to be now, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got it. You've already done it. And now, Will, so this is the question that I was talking to you about pre-show. Who's the next player that you're starting a thing for? Because you have 100% record right now, and I just think that you have to continue down this thing.
Yeah.
Because obviously somebody's watching Twitter and they're like, this guy can pick a player. He's already picked Adams. So who's next on the list?
Well, I think we should go for Messi or Yamal. He looked quite good, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, that kid, yeah, I mean, he's 17. I mean, he's no Mason Bennett, I'll say that. But, a couple years older, but I'm sure he'd be a snippet, whatever, 70, 80 million pounds that we could get in for. But yeah, he looks a decent player. But yeah, so I'll look forward to that. Well, look forward to your next campaign. And I would just say, enjoy the moment, enjoy Ebou Adams's video. I'm sure it's saved on your phone and you sent it around to all your mates. You're probably the most popular guy on Derby County Twitter right now. Certainly more popular than me and Jack, that's for certain. But Will Brady, Will Savage on Twitter. Will, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on, a successful campaign to bring Ebou back to the club. And, again, enjoy the feeling, man, because it's a special day when he gave you a shout out and things like that. And hope to see a lot more of you on the podcast in the future.
Thank you.
And Jack, you've been hard at work, Rams Review HQ, doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, recording pods and everything. Again, before we go, just talk us through in a couple of sentences how big this signing is of Ebou Adams.
I think he's a game changer in the same way he was in the second half of last season. I said it on the latest podcast. I don't see a way that Derby would have gone up without him. And in that sense, the midfield had to have at least somebody in the Ebou Adams mould, somebody of that profile, to be able to get him, who, as cliche as it is, knows the club, can slot right in, hopefully pick up where he left off, and bring some continuity, as I said earlier, to the midfield, to a crucial role in the team in that kind of engine room, is yeah. I mean, I think it's our biggest sign of the summer. And you can see that I'm excited because I've just broken the try not to refer to Derby as we, as us thing there, haven't I? So yeah, I think yeah, it's huge, and I think we can all be buzzing about it for the next few days. I think the next move now will probably be a goalkeeper on the basis that Derby are going to need two. I think that's the next big position of kind of concern. But yeah, Ebou Adams is an absolute game changer for this Derby midfield.
It's hard to disagree with that, Jack. And yeah, Ebou Adams, there was an Ebou-sized hole in my heart, and it's been filled. There was an Ebou-sized hole in our midfield, and it's been filled. And it's difficult to sit there and when you find the right player at the right time and they're the right fit and they want to be here, I think that you can go that goes a long way, and that's not something necessarily that Derby have had for a really long time. I mean, we're not too far removed from spending $8 million on Jacob Butterfield, no, 4.5 on Jacob Butterfield. So we're not too far removed from that and his weird thing with feet. But whatever. Story for another time. But Ebou Adams is going to be a good player for us. It'll be interesting to see in the next spate of friendlies, how many minutes he plays, because we cannot afford to just be like, it'd be great. You could just keep playing 90 minutes week after week after week, because we don't want to end up into a, dare I say, George Thorne situation where those kind of things happen. And I think the sports science departments and everything have evolved enough where that won't happen again. But it's an important sign-in for Derby, and hopefully he can go out and hit the heights again and solidify that midfield, make that spot his own, and that's one less spot that we have to worry about. So with that, Jack, Will, thank you so much for joining us on this special video edition of the Rams Review podcast. You can check out our podcast wherever you get our podcast, because Jason and Jack spoke last night. And don't forget to subscribe if you're really enjoying this video, because we'll hopefully be trying to do more of these in the future. So with that, there's only one last thing to say, and that is up the Rams.